This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. Facebook, progenitor of social networking. How did it happen and what's the future? To find out, we have the author Ben Mezrich, the author of the new book, The Accidental Billionaires, the founding of Facebook, a tale of sex, money, genius, and betrayal. He's here with us now. Ben Mezrich, good to be with you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Can you explain a little bit about the genesis of Facebook? I think we all know it was created in...
Well, it was a couple of college kids
right.
at Harvard, kind of geeky, dorky kids, a brilliant kid named Mark Zuckerberg, who essentially, it started with a prank, a college prank, where one night, late at night, he actually hacked into the computer systems at Harvard and pulled up pictures of every girl on campus. And he made a sort of hot or not website where you could vote on who was the hottest girl at Harvard. And he kind of emailed it out and didn't really think much of it. Over the course of a few hours, it actually ended up crashing the servers at Harvard.
Because it was so popular.
It was so popular, everybody wanted to log on, and he nearly got kicked out of school. And shortly afterwards, he got the idea that, well, if people could put their own pictures up, this would be something interesting. And him and a friend, Eduardo, who actually put up $1,000, came up with this idea, and they built this incredible company. And Mark's a genius, and he basically created his own social scene, his own social world that he could be the head of.
Now, he used a lot of what was already there at Harvard to do this.
Well, there were other social networks, you know, but this was something very new in that it was your actual social world put onto the internet. There was nothing quite that well done before that. There were Facebooks, there was a way to find out if someone was in one of your classes, that kind of thing. But the idea of actually putting a college campus online had never really been done like that before.
All right, now talk about another group enters the
Sure.
scene in your book, because eventually they all end up in Larry Summers' office.
They do.
Explain a little bit about how they get there, and Larry Summers is dealing with a complaint.
Right.
You described
what happened was there's these two guys, the Winklevoss twins, who are these 6'5" Olympic rowers. They're like the jocks. They're the good-looking guys. They're kind of running the social scene. And when they saw Mark in the newspaper after he almost got kicked out of school in the college newspaper, they actually went to Mark because they were developing like a dating website, a site called the Harvard Connection that became ConnectU. And they wanted Mark to be their engineer to create their site. Mark essentially blew them off. He kept talking back and forth with them, but never really built their site. And then he launched Facebook. So the Winklevoss twins decided that Mark had stolen their idea. So they got really upset, and they brought it to Larry Summers, who was president of Harvard. And they said, you need to do something about this. And Larry Summers essentially looked at them disdainfully and held their report and just threw it and basically said, this is a dispute between students. And
do you think, though, that they had a case?
Well, you know what? I don't really have an opinion about what's going on there. Mark is a genius, and he created something that had never been done before. The Winklevoss twins did, work on an idea, and that Mark saw their idea. I don't know the legalities of that. There was a big law case, and I believe there was a settlement, and it leaked out that they got some large amount of money. But I don't think it was up to Larry Summers to decide, and I kind of agree with him there. I mean, he basically decided that, this is not something for me to decide. It was something the courts eventually got into. I understand both points of view. I understand why the Winklevosses feel like they had something stolen from them. I also understand why Mark looks at something that he created and says, well, there were a lot of things. There was Friendster, there was MySpace, there was a lot of things going on, and I created Facebook.
All right, now you've got the two founders, Saverin and Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg, right?
What happened to bring in this third person? This is Sean Parker.
Sean Parker,
right?
Parker's
because
awesome.
This kind of changes the whole dynamic of this and turns it really into a business.
Right. Sean Parker's like a rock star. This is the kid who had co-founded Napster, never went to college, founded Plaxo, and essentially he was, lying in bed one day and saw on a laptop Facebook. It had just gotten to Stanford, and he thought, this is a billion-dollar idea. And he's the one who really brought it from a dorm room company to the next set. I mean, Mark looked up to him, saw him as this revolutionary, this kind of hacker rebel, and Mark loved that. And so him and Mark essentially took it to the next level.
Now, this hacker rebel introduced him to a lot of the finer things in life as well,
right?
He's a social kid. You talked about, in the book, you talk about, a lot of wooing of
Victoria's Secret
Zuckerberg
models
and Saverin and venture capital money and expensive dinners and parties.
As this explodes, you know, VC people start showing up. They start becoming the toast of Silicon Valley. At Harvard, they're getting groupies because everyone knows these are the kids that founded Facebook. And then, you know, Mark went home with a Victoria's Secret model, according to the sources that talked to me. So a lot of things started to happen for them. They became the social stars in a lot of ways. Although Mark is a very interesting guy. He's not a social guy. He's not looking for parties. He doesn't care about money, which is a fascinating part of Mark. He's just one of these guys who fell into the biggest company in the world. And so Sean Parker was the guy who brought them into the social scene.
All right, we're going to continue the conversation more about the social scene of turning the social networking site into a successful business. Also, the irony, a site that connects people, pushed the two founders apart. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. My guest is Ben Mezrich. He is the author of the new book, The Accidental Billionaires, the founding of Facebook, a tale of sex, money, genius, and betrayal. And also, just for the record, just want to mention what Facebook has to say about your book, Ben. You say that Ben clearly aspires to be the Jackie Collins or Danielle Steele of Silicon Valley. In fact, his own publisher put it best. The book isn't reportage. It's big, juicy fun. We agree with the first part of that and think many readers will concur. The people at Facebook help you write the book?
Not the people at Facebook. I mean, I made repeated attempts to talk to Mark, and it was kind of like waiting for Godot. It was a long process of almost getting to talk to Mark. I'm a big fan of Mark Zuckerberg and of Facebook. I think it's genius. I think it's the next evolution in humanity. I think it's changing the world.
Well, clearly there's some Russian investors that agree with you.
I agree. And listen, I think it's devalued. I think that thing should be 10 billion or 15 billion. I really do. But they're nervous about the book. They're nervous because they haven't read it. You know, Jackie Collins, Danielle Steele, Silicon Valley. I want to put that on the paperback. I love that. I understand their point, but once they read it, I don't think they'll be that upset.
Well, let me put it to you, though, that what happened in Silicon Valley after Zuckerberg meets with all of the VCs? Because he's introduced around by Sean Parker.
Well, Sean Parker, first Peter Thiel ends up putting $500,000 in, and that's the beginning of Facebook in a lot of ways. Now, Sean Parker, in his view, had been screwed over by Sequoia at some point in his life. He believed
Sequoia Capital, venture capital.
He believed that they had the reason he was forced out of Plaxo had to do with them. So he basically set up a meeting with Sequoia, who really wanted to invest in Facebook, but he had no intention of ever letting them. And he had Mark dress up in pajamas and show up for this meeting. But you know, it's interesting. It's kids out there in Silicon Valley, you know, suddenly on the ground floor of a many-billion-dollar company, a huge company, and it's very interesting to see what really went on there.
What's happened? What went on between the two founders? Because the two founders, they're not having any Facebook time together.
was expunged from Facebook. Mark moved off to California, and Mark built the company. Eduardo was in New York and then went and finished Harvard. He did some work, you know, in his mind with the advertising, the business side of it. But Mark and Sean really built this company. Mark really took it to the next level. And in Mark's mind, Eduardo was someone who was being carried along a little bit. And I think what happened is there was a real falling out. There was actions on both sides and a battle, legal thing, a suit and a countersuit. And eventually he disappeared from the history of Facebook. Recently, he's been re-added as co-founder of Facebook. Whatever that means, it might have something to do with the book. It might not. But now he is co-founder of Facebook.
Does that, in your mind, set the record straight as far as what you've learned?
I think when two kids are in a dorm room and one kid puts up $1,000 and the other kid comes up with the idea and builds it, they're co-founders. You know, I don't know about the legality of it. I'm not a lawyer. But I believe Mark is the genius who built the company, and Eduardo was his best friend at the time.
All right. I want to thank you very much, Ben Mezrich, coming in, talking to us about your new book, The Accidental Billionaires, really the history of Facebook.